This is the continuation of the first part about the Yuuzhan Vong. In this video, we'll talk about some sections I left out or overlooked, such as their hierarchy, important leaders or characters, their technology, and more. I tried to find a Yuuzhan Vong mod for Empire at War, but unfortunately, I couldn't find an interesting one, and I also ran out of space on my PC. So let's move on. Before we begin, I should mention that, so far, I haven't found a website that can generate the voice of Cain from Tybrim Wars, so I'm sorry about that. To simplify, you could describe the entire Yuuzhan Vong culture and religion as centered on pain, sacrifice, and war. The Yuuzhan Vong culture focused on sacrifice and their gods, though warriors, in particular, followed a philosophy of pain. They tended to glorify pain, not as a motive for action, but as a way of life. This stemmed from their belief that, just as their gods sacrificed their bodies to create the galaxy, the Yuuzhan Vong had to sacrifice parts of their own bodies for a greater purpose. As such, they viewed body modification as a way to grow closer to their deities. However, they never mutilated their bodies in a way that permanently impaired their ability to function. This resulted in some Yuuzhan Vong having scars, extensive tattoos, or visible markings. It was even known that the most elite individuals grafted organs from other creatures onto their bodies. Devotional practices to the gods required bloodshed during prayer. The shamed ones were forbidden from attending religious ceremonies. As Yuuzhan Vong achieved greater success in life, they began the process of sacrificing parts of their bodies and replacing them with organs from other creatures, enhancing their abilities. This took place during the escalation ceremony, where a designed organism, related to an implanter, made cuts and incisions to place the implants. Sometimes, the implant was accepted by the body, and the Yuuzhan Vong was promoted to a higher rank. However, at times, the implant was rejected, resulting in the individual's death or their transformation into a shamed one, ridiculed by society. These failures were believed to be the work of the Yuuzhan Vong gods, though in some cases, they were due to the failure of the Shaper overseeing the escalation ceremony. Family was a key element in their society, and Yuuzhan Vong were often tied to a family group known as a domain. Some domains were more powerful than others. Beyond this family structure, the Yuuzhan Vong used a caste system that included warriors, shapers, priests, intendants, and workers. Romantic relationships between members of different castes were forbidden. Loyalties to domains ran deep, going beyond mere likes or dislikes. There were ritual declarations that lower-ranking Yuuzhan Vong had to recite when addressing a superior. However, members of one caste were not required to salute a superior from another caste, such as intendants to members of the warrior caste. When a new Yuuzhan Vong was born, they were sent to a nursery specific to their caste. If the newborn had physical deformities or illnesses, they were eliminated, except in cases of minor deformities. In the rare case of twins, considered an exceptional event, they were forced to fight each other to the death at a certain age, with only one surviving. This was seen as an omen of a great event for the victor. Funeral processions were conducted in a way that did not preserve the bodies of the dead. Yuuzhan Vong morgues consisted of mourners gathering with assigned priests. In these ceremonies, priests extracted parts of the deceased's body to dedicate them to various gods. The Yuuzhan Vong's beliefs deeply influenced their actions and personality. According to their religion, life was suffering, and death was the ultimate release from that suffering. Because of this, they believed nothing could be learned without pain and embraced this principle, willingly marching toward death. Some, like the domain Shai, took this to the extreme, inflicting pain on themselves to the point of enjoying it, as they believed this earned the favor of their deities. The greatest glory was to die in battle, while dying in the cold void between galaxies was considered a shameful death. The species also deeply valued honor, a central principle for many Yuuzhan Vong. In interrogations, their word was sacred. If they promised mercy in exchange for information, they generally kept their promise. In one case, a Yuuzhan Vong commander agreed to a personal duel to decide the fate of a planet, stating that if he was defeated, his forces would spare it. Though the commander was sincere, his subordinates, in collusion with the War Master, tried to undermine this honorable combat. Denying an honorable fight was considered despicable, especially by the warrior caste. Warriors even respected a worthy opponent who faced a single Yuuzhan Vong, valuing their bravery and skill. There was also the concept of Usrok, similar to the Wookiee life debt, which involved eternal gratitude and loyalty toward someone for a significant act, pledging to fight to the death for that person. As for food, the Yuuzhan Vong took no pleasure in eating and were indifferent to flavors. The only exception was when enjoyment came from a ritual, such as the slaying of a great beast. The Yuuzhan Vong had a fanatical hatred for machines, which they considered abominations and an affront to their gods. They believed that combustion, like creating fire through machines, was the first abomination. This stemmed from their reverence for organic life. In nature, one life form is consumed by another, perpetuating the ecosystem's cycle. Machines, being lifeless, could replace organic life, something the Yuuzhan Vong would never allow. Despite their barbaric reputation, the Yuuzhan Vong revered life in all its forms. Among the races of the Promised Land, they favored the Hodin, who rejected advanced technology due to their connection with nature. Some primitive species, like certain inhabitants of Wayland, voluntarily allied with the Yuuzhan Vong, seeing them as defenders of organic life. However, many believed the Yuuzhan Vong only sought to manipulate and destroy to meet their own needs. According to their religion, they had to prove themselves worthy creations of their gods, otherwise, they would be destroyed and replaced by a superior species. Their beliefs held that this had happened 3 times until the gods created the Yuuzhan Vong. The Yuuzhan Vong operated under a caste system ranging from the powerful Supreme Overlord, a title held by a single individual, to the humble and oppressed worker caste. Their political system was a theocracy, with the Supreme Overlord deriving authority directly as the mouthpiece of Yuuzhan, the Supreme God. The Supreme Overlord was the highest title a Yuuzhan Vong could hold. This absolute leader wielded political, military, and religious control and was considered the living emissary of Yuuzhan. Known Supreme Overlords include Yogand, the First, Coriel, who discovered the galaxy and hesitated to invade it; Shinra Jaemin, his successor and executioner, leader of the invasion; Onami, the puppeteer who manipulated Shinra and was the true mastermind; Nazchika, the last, who signed the Yuuzhan Vong surrender. The title could be obtained in several ways. The Supreme Overlord could designate a successor, an aspirant could claim it through combat if leadership was challenged, or, in the absence of the above, the highest ranking or strongest individual close to the leader would assume it. The Shapers were the scientists of the Yuuzhan Vong, responsible for overseeing their biotechnology. They focused on creating and developing organic technology and, alongside priests, explored its arcane aspects. Typically shorter than the average Yuuzhan Vong, they were distinguished by intricate tentacle headdresses and their Shaper hands. A Master Shaper's hand had 8 fingers, while an Adept's had 5, each with a specific tool for their work. Some Shapers, like Mejin Quad and Ningyim, hid weapons in their hands. Their headdresses, connected directly to their nervous systems, were used in ceremonies to express deference or submission and could change shape to reflect the wearer's mood. Shapers held a high place in society. Their ranks included Master Shaper, Adept Shaper, and Initiate Shaper, also known as Novice Shaper. Notable Shapers include Ningyim, an Adept who served under Mejin Quad and later Shinra, creating new protocols; Mejin Quad, who conducted experiments with Jedi on Yavin 4, Yulfath, briefly mentioned in records. The priest caste was highly influential in the theocratic Yuuzhan Vong society. Its members served the lesser deities governing the Yuuzhan Vong, organized into various sects, each dedicated to a specific deity's worship. Their ranks included Most High Priest, Priest, Seer, and Savant. The warrior caste formed the Yuuzhan Vong's military, one of the largest castes and the species' martial branch. Its members were trained from a young age to excel in combat and were known for their aggression. Notable figures include Savong La and Nazchika, who served as war masters at different times. Their primary weapon was the Amphistaff, a living snake capable of spitting venom or coiling around enemies. Warriors revered Yuuzhanka, the Slayer, and sought honor in battle. They wore Von Duyum crab armor, a living protection resistant to blasters and lightsabers, though with weak points at the armpits and inner hips where the shell segments joined. The highest rank was War Master. Additionally, an elite group called Hunters was assigned to missions that regular warriors couldn't handle. Some Chazrach, shaped slaves with experience, could occupy the lowest ranks of this caste. The Intendant caste was responsible for keeping Yuuzhan Vong society running, managing its economy. It was the smallest caste, without a patron deity or battle cry, unlike the others. Intendants handled trade, bureaucracy, exchange, and the enslaved workforce. Notable members include Nom Anna, a deadly enemy to the Jedi, and Shimra Jamin, who was an Intendant before becoming Supreme Overlord. Intendants favored Yuuzhan, the trickster goddess, and acted as politicians and administrators. Their ranks included High Prefect, Prefect, Consul, Executor, and Assistant. The worker caste was the most numerous but also the lowest, dedicated to servitude, manual labor, and slavery. It included the shamed ones, Yuuzhan Vong whose bodies rejected implants or organic modifications, Yuuzhan Vong born directly into the caste, those who failed in other castes, and conquered or shaped species, like the Chazrach. Slaves and the shamed ones were treated with contempt, even by other workers. Interestingly, Yuuzhan Vong born into this caste were descendants of the shamed ones. Speaking of the shamed ones, they were a subcaste within the Yuuzhan Vong, marked by imperfection. They were Yuuzhan Vong who had failed in other castes, whose bodies rejected implants, committed heresies, or had physical deformities. Though part of the worker caste, they were despised even by their peers. Considered rejected by the gods, they could only worship Yuuzhan, the deity of the outcasts. Their presence at major religious ceremonies was seen as an insult to the honored god. After the Yuuzhan Vong attack on Yavin 4 and the redemption of Urapuyun, the shamed ones began to believe that the Force was a remnant of Yuuzhan and that the Jedi shared a bond with the Yuuzhan Vong. This gave rise to the Jedi heresy, led by Nom Anna, who took on the identity of the prophet Yuuzhan. He preached that the arrival of Zoamar Sikat, the living planet, would herald the liberation of the shamed ones. The heresy's followers rebelled against Supreme Overlord Shimra and the warrior caste, and the chaos they caused was crucial in the Battle of Yuuzhan. After the war ended, the shamed ones were renamed the Exalted, symbolizing their redemption. At the conclusion of the Yuuzhan Vong War, the castes were dissolved, and the Yuuzhan Vong went their separate ways, seeking new destinies across the galaxy. The Yuuzhan Vong religion, known as the True Way, was fundamental to their society. Fervent devotees, they worshipped multiple deities and, before their defeat, believed they had to fulfill their gods' desires through conquest and genocide. However, these gods were a creation following the loss or destruction of their home world and their disconnection from the Force. Let's explore who they were. Yuuzhan, the creator. Yuuzhan, the supreme deity, sacrificed parts of his body to create the universe, the lesser gods, and the Yuuzhan Vong. In honor of his sacrifices, the Yuuzhan Vong offered parts of their bodies and living beings as tribute. He was formally worshipped only on the holiest days of the calendar, with dedicated rites and sacrifices. The Yuuzhan Vong took their name from him, and it was sacrilegious to call them simply Vong, as many in the galaxy did. Only the Supreme Overlord could address him, and they were ritually modified and scarred to resemble Yuuzhan. Yuuzhan, the trickster. Yuuzhan, the cloaked goddess of deception and aggression, represented the Intendant caste. The New Republic exploited her mythology in a psychological warfare operation, nicknaming their pilot Jaina Solo the Trickster and Goddess. The Yuuzhan Vong, believing they faced a living incarnation of Yuuzhan, suffered a devastating blow to their morale. Yuuzhan, the Slayer. Yuuzhan, the god of war, was revered by the warrior caste. He taught the Yuuzhan Vong the importance of blood sacrifices, required in every prayer except morning and evening ones. Warmasters were reshaped in his image, though in statues, he took the form of a Yarmusk, a war coordinator. Warriors worshipped him fanatically, some prioritizing him over Yuuzhan. Alongside Yuuzhan, he formed the twin gods. He was not an original deity but a creation of the priest caste when the Yuuzhan Vong became warlike. He was also the patron of prefects, and some philosophers believed he occasionally acted against his people's interests. Yuuzhan, the Shaper. Yuuzhan, the goddess of life, was worshipped by the Shaper caste. She represented innovation and creation, symbolized by farming tools, infants, and domesticated animals. The patron of birth, she was also invoked by warriors seeking innovative strategies. Unique among the deities, she demanded no sacrifices and promoted no violence, dreaming of a peaceful galaxy. However, Yuuzhan and Yuuzhan thwarted her vision, and the Shapers created weapons to destroy the infidels she wished to integrate. As a result, myths labeled her an idealistic dreamer. Onami claimed Yuuzhan resided in Tahiri Vela, who was nearly transformed into a Yuuzhan Vong warrior. Yuuzhan and Yuuzhan, the lovers. Yuuzhan and Yuuzhan, the lover gods and twins, punished relationships between castes, which were forbidden in Yuuzhan Vong society. Any violation required immediate sacrifices to appease them. Yuuzhan, the pardoner. Yuuzhan, the goddess of forgiveness, was the only deity of the shamed ones. With 1,000 eyes, she protected the outcasts and, according to belief, could heal some, restoring their status. Her grotesque appearance reflected that of her imperfect worshippers. Despite her low esteem, she was honored with divine statues on ship bridges alongside Yuuzhan or Yuuzhan. Higher caste Yuuzhan Vong mockingly called her the mother of many eyes of the whiners, but with caution, as she was still a goddess. Due to their beliefs, the Yuuzhan Vong rejected mechanical technology, from simple machines to droids, viewing them as a corrupting influence. Instead, they developed biots, living creatures designed for specific functions. They preferred these life forms over lifeless machines, which they saw as lacking spirit. All their technology, from starships to weapons and everyday objects, was entirely biological. Shapers drove the development of this biotechnology, which proved more resilient than conventional technology. Among their creations were the Yarmusks, known as war coordinators. These biots acted as tactical analysis computers, coordinating Yuuzhan Vong forces with terrifying precision. Vilips, communication organisms, rivaled the galactic holonet, projecting holograms of living light perfected over centuries. Their collision avoidance systems matched those of the galaxy, with antennas made of spiral fibers embedded in yorick coral hulls, sensitive to signals. Biots were fueled by nutrients, analogous to power lines, and ships used navigation brains to calculate hyperspace jumps. After combat, ships refueled in a process slightly more efficient than their technological counterparts. Personal weaponry included amphistaffs, living serpentine weapons that could transform into spears or whips. Warriors wore Von Duyun crab armor, resistant to blasters and lightsabers. Ships, built from yorick coral, used Yare core, plasma weapons that consumed enemy hulls, and Dovin basiles, gravity-manipulating organisms that generated singularities to block attacks or disable enemy shields. These Dovin basiles also created interdiction fields, knocking out the occupants of ships pulled from hyperspace. Their most devastating weapons were biological plagues, capable of sterilizing entire planetary systems. Yorick coral formed the basis of their living ships, shaping hulls and internal structures. The Yuuzhan Vong perfected bioengineering to produce corallites in less than a month, rivaling Income's X-Wing production but without generating industrial waste. The ship's outer skin, though alive, lacked nerve endings in the vacuum of space, but the interior was sensitive, alerting to breaches or intruders. Dovin basiles, grown separately and then grafted, created gravitational distortions that affected nearby nerves, causing blind spots in lower priority ships. To counter this, primary ships incorporated neural biots forming a complete tactile network. Cognition hoods were the key link between the Yuuzhan Vong and their biotechnology. These organic helmets connected to ships via living cords, allowing pilots to interact directly with them. Commanders used central hoods on large ships, while secondary hoods on corallites maintained control if the primary failed. Through the hood, pilots accessed the ship's memories, merging with it. Though ships spoke in the Yuuzhan Vong language, external pilots could transmit images and thoughts. The Cognition Throne, an advanced version, enhanced this connection. We've explored the most brutal aspects of Yuuzhan Vong society, their culture, beliefs, castes, deities, and biotechnology. While they may seem like a ruthless and cruel species on the surface, deep down, they harbored a fanatical devotion to life, prioritizing the organic over the artificial. However, this philosophy didn't save them. Throughout the Yuuzhan Vong War, their beliefs began to crumble. Contact with the Jedi, the influence of the Force, and their reconciliation with Zoamar Secret, their lost homeworld, shattered their dogmas, leading them to a new path. In the next video, we'll dive into the Yuuzhan Vong ships, living organisms that challenge the galaxy. I hope to find a good mod to show you some epic visuals. Give this video a like, subscribe, comment, and share. See you in the next one. May the Force be with you.